right, I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the November 7th, 2019 agenda.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Perfect. I'll move on to accept a motion to approve the October 3rd, 2019 minutes.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Perfect. Moving right along, Sarah, would you like to discuss the schedule meeting? What's that? Yeah, she's going to discuss the memo on that.
Sure. As stated in the memo, we often struggle to get a quorum for our December meeting because of holiday events. I think there are 2 people who have already said they won't be able to attend that meeting. We may not need a December meeting. The one case that we know is pending. They're fine with that being scheduled for January. So we may cancel that meeting anyway. The January, first Thursday in January is January 2nd. So we would propose moving both of those meetings back a week to December 12th and January 9th, but we're open to other scheduling options. We just want you all to set a schedule for those 2 months.
Mr. Farr?
Is the room available both nights?
Yes.
Nothing else going on?
No.
Just tell me when to show up, I don't care.
Anybody else have any issues with those dates?
No, they work for me.
It's fine.
I say we do it.
Okay, great. Well, I will just note that we may end up canceling the December meeting, but if we do, there will definitely be a January meeting on January 9th.
Great, thanks, Sarah. So moving right along, discuss the preliminary and final plat for PC 2019-16, the Armor Road redevelopment 5th plat. Staff report on procedure.
Sure. So this is the one area in our redevelopment area, or the one parcel that has not yet been platted. We did not plat this with our original Armor Road redevelopment area plats because it was not owned by the city. And now that we do own it and we're getting ready to move forward with development, it's time to plat this. Because it was not previously part of a preliminary plat, it's a combined preliminary and final plat before you this evening. Unlike the last time we did this with Quick Trip, Olson prepared one drawing that has everything on it, but we do need you to take 2 actions. Approval of the preliminary plat, and then a recommendation to the city council for approval of the final plat. Going through the criteria for plats, this lot does conform with all of our criteria for platting. We did advertise this properly, and we would recommend approval.
So I assume this is also the applicant presentation and the staff
Yes,
presentation
this
all in
is
one.
that's true. All in one tonight. Everything is all in one for this item.
Does anybody have any questions? Sarah, on this? Nope.
I would point out that we will eventually be dedicating some of this right-of-way that's in the original Burger King property to Missouri Department of Transportation, or to the Highway Commission, and this does dedicate a new water line easement to the city. We'll be extending a water line across the north side of this property after we demolish the Burger King.
Okay, great. Then I guess so there is a public hearing involved with this, so I will open the public hearing on that. And seeing nobody from the public, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Perfect. Moving on, I will entertain a motion on the approval of the preliminary plat.
I move that preliminary plat PC 2019-16 be approved as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Perfect. And I will now entertain a motion on this case for a recommendation to the city council for the final plat.
Move that we forward it to the city council.
Second.
Could you recommend approval or denial, please?
I thought we already approved it.
No, for the final plat. You need to forward it with a recommendation, please.
We just approved.
Approve the final plat. And
Just approved the final plat.
You approved the preliminary.
I
I got rolled into one. Yeah.
approved the final plat then.
For a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Perfect.
Thank you. This will be on, the final plat will be on the November 19th City Council agenda.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Breezing right along here, we'll move on to the zoning ordinance text amendment, PC 2019-17 on the accessory dwellings. Sarah, staff report, please.
Yes, so shortly before the approval of the zoning ordinance was before you and then the city council for approval, we did have some questions about the requirements for accessory dwelling units. One of the requirements for ADUs is that the owner of the property occupy either the principal dwelling or the accessory dwelling unit as their permanent residence. And there were some questions about whether this was a necessary requirement as part of that. But we never received any direction to remove that, so it is part of our current ordinance. One of our council members, Brian DeLong, has asked us to go ahead and prepare a text amendment to remove that requirement. This proposed text amendment does not make any other changes to the other requirements for accessory dwelling units, which limit the number, the size, and have some design requirements and parking requirements associated with them. I will note we had, so that's what's before you tonight is a recommendation to the city council to make that change. I would note that we had some miscommunication about the public hearing, so it was advertised 2 days late. The resolution that's before you includes your finding that this was adequate notice, which you are able to do under the terms of the Planning Commission, is waive minor irregularities. We feel that 13 days is as good a notice as 15 days notice in the Kansas City Star for the purposes of this hearing. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. This is another item that does require its own public hearing.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Sarah?
An accessory dwelling is what?
An accessory dwelling is an additional dwelling unit that accompanies a principal dwelling unit in any of our residential zoning districts. So it is a dwelling unit that accompanies usually a single-family home. It can be like an attic apartment or an addition onto the home that's a separate apartment or a garage that's been converted into an accessory dwelling unit. People often refer to these as mother-in-law's quarters or granny flats.
So I could own 10 rental houses that all have garages on them, and I could convert all the garages over to dwelling units, and then with this text amendment, don't have to live in it and just make more money.
Yes, as long as they conformed with the other requirements of the accessory dwelling unit. So they can't exceed more than 50% of the living area of the principal unit or 1,200 square feet, whichever is less. You have to provide additional parking on site.
It says, though, that it can be waived, though the parking can be waived by you.
If the context and circumstances of the dwelling unit prove the space unnecessary. And it also has to be designed to maintain the architectural design, style, appearance, or character of the principal building.
The way I read this too is if I own a piece of property down there, I could build an apartment in the backyard.
Yes, you could.
I mean, so in other words, every residence down the avenues or up in my house, if we change this, if it's a rental, can build an apartment in the backyard.
Yes, you could if you conform with these other requirements.
I'm not for this.
I have to agree with Tom. That first thing I thought was, oh, great. All these guys that own all these duplexes now are going to convert their garages. There's traffic, there's going to be, I just don't think by opening it up that broad that it really does what we wanted it to do to begin with. I don't see the positive impact to the city by allowing people to build an accessory dwelling behind their house. I mean, all it's going to benefit is the landlords. If they want to convert their garage and they can get one more tenant in there, and I don't see the benefit to the city. I mean, unless I'm missing something, and if I was a neighbor and people started around me started filling up their garages with people, I don't know that I would like that very much.
I think unless there's any more questions for Sarah specifically, I think we let Bryant make I'm assuming you're acting as the applicant for tonight in that regard. Okay.
The city is the
The
applicant.
city is the applicant, okay. Mr. DeLong, you have
On side.
the
Okay, here
floor.
we go. Yeah, I got it on. All right, so, I mean, that's a concern you hear a lot of different places when this has been proposed everywhere else. Generally, you don't see an issue coming out of it in the end, though. I had a hard time finding any research that said any area that has eliminated this requirement has just had rampant rental issues. Are people building random structures in their backyard? I mean, there is a lot of restrictions in this that'll stay in here that'll prevent, I think, that from happening. And of course, the parking space requirement. Matter of fact, recently in California, they have made it to where cities cannot even limit to owner occupier. Overall, for me, it was an affordability, housing flexibility. We don't have this requirement on any other type of housing, on a single family duplexes, multifamily, that it has to be an owner occupied. So to apply it to this, I think would, to me, not really seem fair to all the other types of housing. I mean, we don't restrict what you can do with an individual property. I'm not sure why we would want to restrict this. I think we can also, I think this is already happening too. This helps bring some non-conformance into conformance. And then you might get, the city might be able to get in more and do more inspections, check stuff. And also, I think there isn't a question of enforceability of our current regulation now. I mean, how would we even enforce this now? That, I'm not sure if our current ordinance actually addresses that. So that's my basic, just allowing more flexibility. I mean, you could have a scenario where you lived in the house and you were renting your accessory dwelling unit, and then you want to upgrade your house or move out of your house. Then you would have to convert that back to whatever it is, something else. And so this just, to me, really opens the door to allow it, just flexibility again. And we are, 60+% rental. So there is a good chance we are going to get some more people generating income. But hopefully with the quantity, it helps balance some of our, housing shortage into affordable housing, which we're not unaffordable now, but we're getting to that point where we want to me, keep a good balance here.
Tim, do you have a question?
I was just trying to figure out what is the average size of it's talking about 50%. It would not exceed 50%. What is the principal dwelling? What's the largest or the average principal dwelling there?
I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
They're not very big. I mean, we're talking
We've-
small garage. The one over here is like 500.
Well,
square
no,
feet.
for a principal.
Oh, for
For the principal.
I'm
the
I'm
largest
not
ones
sure
would
we
be in
have,
your-
the largest ones are probably in the homes in River Forest. Although we might have some bigger Northgate Village homes, that would,
You're talking 1,200, 1,500 square foot.
probably
of
more
the
like
principal,
2,500.
I would say 25. There are homes in River Forest that are probably 2,500 square foot.
But in the avenues, they can be quite a bit smaller. I'm not sure what an average would be, to be
Probably
honest.
800 to 1,000 square feet if that.
I didn't look through a lot, but when I was looking at the avenues, 1,000 kind of seemed where you're getting in the average there.
So we've got quite a
So
range.
50% of that.
So they could build a 500 square foot apartment in their backyard.
So when July was when we updated the zoning ordinance to formally allow ADUs, what's been the result in the current state? Have we had, in the last 4 months, many applicants for the ADU? Because that has to go through its own process, right?
Yeah, to my knowledge, we haven't had anyone additional convert one. Simply because those that are interested in converting don't live in the
don't live there.
properties.
So, but we
We do have several that are North Kansas City residents themselves that also own rental properties that have shown interest in it.
That was a strange idea I had that I didn't know if would strike the balance here. Is on one hand we've got a proposal of you can't be you have to be owner occupied. The other one is you don't have to be. What if it was in between somewhere and you have to be a resident of the city?
I think the intent of it was to allow people to do like the mother-in-law's quarters types of things, or, as Laura outlined in her email, and I mean, I get that, but I think in reality, you're not going to see very many of those types of applications. They're going to end up being property or landlords that want to convert some garage space or whatever to generate more income. I think that's going to be the bulk of the applicants that you get. And I just don't know that, I get that we want to increase rooftops, that kind of stuff. I just don't think that's the way to do it.
No.
I think that's, you're cramming more people into an already small space, and I just don't think that's the way to do it. At least at this time, I really don't see the upside to allowing that to happen just to get more people to move here.
Sarah, can you, on number 6, basically about the design style, can you explain the process that an applicant would go through to ensure all of those parameters are met? I mean, I imagine that comes to your office, you have to approve it. I mean, just gotta walk me through what that, because no one's done it yet. I mean, what would that whole process look like from start to finish if someone wanted to do that? I mean, you have to go through every painstaking detail. I mean, at a high level, what does that process look like?
It's a pretty simple process in that you would submit your plans to community development and we review them and then approve or make comments asking for changes. We do a similar thing, like if you're going to build a new garage, there is a requirement that the garage be architecturally compatible with the main building. And you wouldn't think that that would be a big deal with a garage, but people sometimes have crazy ideas about what they want their garage to look like. Or we had a situation near here where the property owner was going to build a new garage, and then they were thinking about renovating the main home, but they wanted to do the garage and then the house, so the garage was not going to look like, one of the things we primarily look for is the form of the roof. They wanted to do an angled roof on the garage that did not match the main home, with the idea that then they'd renovate the house and the house would then look like the garage. And we had to say, no, you have to do it the other way around. The garage has to look like the house at the time it's constructed. So if you want to change the house radically, and then the garage is going to match the new, renovated house, you've got to do that first. So it's a staff review. We mainly look at form and materials, and then say, yes, this is compatible, or no, you need to make some changes before we issue a permit.
Has the city been approached by landlords kind of requesting this? And if so, about approximately how many have kind of said they would be interested in doing this?
Since I started working here, landlords have expressed interest in this, and there are, I would say probably 5, 6, maybe already in existence today that are non-conforming. So I would say, I don't know, 10 or so, 10. Over the years, it's been several landlords that have been interested, because many other cities do allow accessory dwelling units.
So you say they're in use of non-conforming.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I guess I just don't understand, why is that being allowed then if they're
So at some point, they were turned into accessory dwelling units
right?
before our time.
Oh, okay.
They've been continuously occupied. If they were vacant for more than 180 days, they would lose their non-conforming status and they wouldn't
Okay.
be allowed to have them anymore, but they've been continuously occupied, so.
Are there-
We have 2 garage apartments off of the alley between Armour and 21st Avenue that we're not sure how long they've been there, but they've been there for quite a while. They've been renovated. They're pretty nice. But, we treat them as legal non-conforming uses because we honestly have no idea when they were converted.
So what would happen in the case where a landlord comes to you, they have their plans, looks good, it gets approved, but they kind of, I'm not saying you would do this, but they kind of showed you something really nice that conforms, and then they just go back and throw up something. I mean, what recourse does the city have to say you need to take that back down? I mean, what would happen in
You
that?
construct to the plan, and so when we go out to do inspections, if you've changed the plan, you do not pass your inspections until you have either brought the construction into compliance with the plan, or you've submitted a revised plan that we've approved.
Okay. And this could be maybe for Bryant as well, but are there any examples of other smaller cities like us around the metro area that, what are their policies on that? Like, Gladstone, Riverside, Prairie Village. I mean, those types of cities. Is there any feedback or any understanding kind of what their policies are on this?
I do know there's several with ADU policies. I'm not 100% sure on the owner occupancy. I tried to do a little bit searching on it, but it's, searching through some other municipalities.
I don't
isn't
have any
always the easiest.
specifics either, but I remember reading an article recently about ADUs, and they talked about how some cities is just kind of they've just taken the gloves off, right? But then some of those cities are actually trying now to reel some of that back in because it just got out of hand, right? So, I mean, if you don't regulate it somehow or keep track of it somehow, it's just going to explode, and you're going to end up with way more than you think you are. In scenarios like you were saying, you're going to have people living in a garage that hasn't been converted because it technically meets the criteria. And if our whole thing is to increase, residents or increase rooftops, I just don't think this is the way to do it. The intent, from when I was reading through some of this material, the intent would be for a homeowner, I live in my house, I don't use the attic anymore, I want to convert that mother-in-law's quarter, or maybe I rent it out, but I live there anyway, right? I get that, I see that. But if I'm a property owner, if I got 5 duplexes down here and they all have a garage, bada boom, bada bang, I'm going to convert those garages. I got 5 more tenants. And I don't know that that's the intent or the spirit of what we had talked about all along with these ADUs. And I'm not really thrilled about just handing landlords a windfall.
Well, I don't know if we're just handing landlords a windfall. I mean, under that scenario that you just described, Sarah, would something like that even pass inspection for the city, theoretically? I mean,
If you were going to convert a garage to a dwelling unit, regardless of the requirements of the zoning ordinance, you would also have to meet the requirements of the building code to make it habitable space. The zoning ordinance does specify that we are issuing a certificate of occupancy to these units before they're occupied, which, triggers the requirement, in addition to just the need to get a building permit to do these types of improvements, specifies that you have to meet the requirements of the residential building code.
Makes sense. I mean, I understand the concerns around this. I really do. But at the same time, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of people say we need to expand the rooftops in North Kansas City. This isn't the way to do it. I mean, the only other ways to do it are incredibly expensive, and you can't just wave a magic wand to make those happen. I mean, it's tear down rebuilds. I mean, unless more buildings burn down, like the one on the corner of Armour and Swift, how else do we increase the rooftops? I mean, we're out of space here in North Kansas City. I mean, I'd be interested to hear other ideas or thoughts on that.
I mean, obviously it's expanding regardless. You look at over by Mirados and everything like that. But as far as the old neighborhoods like that, I don't think moving into a 600 square foot apartment, bringing in residents at that matter is going to solve it. That's not something I'm looking to. Obviously, I'm a resident of North Kansas City. I don't want to see 15 of my neighbors' garages being residents of other people, if that makes any sense at all.
No, it does. I mean, it makes sense to me. I understand. Yeah.
Another problem I see is that if you have a converted garage down the avenues, you figure 2 people move into it, the avenues are already stressed for parking. Where are they going to park? Because they're going to come to Sarah and say, we need a variance because there's no place for us to park. We want to put them out on the street. Now I've got more cars.
Exactly.
I mean, no.
So,
Imagine that scenario where you've got a row of duplexes and there's a driveway between them and there's a garage behind, right? So one or more of the tenants can park in the driveway, but when you renovate and then rent that back garage, basically you're going to tell your tenants you cannot park in the driveway because now you've got 3 people sharing one driveway, so they're going to all end up on the street, which is, if you drive down 27th Street over there, you barely have enough room to turn into a driveway. Where are you going to put all those people? And I know Sarah's getting weirded out because now we're talking about parking again, but it comes up with everything we do.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call for the vote, please.
sure. Does anybody else have any questions or comments
I was just curious if I was looking at the possible recommendations.
I would actually like to recommend we continue the public hearing to the next planning commission meeting so that we can all get a little bit more input and learn a little bit more about this.
I mean, it would be interesting to hear the people who are most interested. I mean, I can kind of assume what their interests are, but the people that care about this the most, I don't think are here, right, today to represent.
Well, I think there's a couple of issues there. I mean, one, I mean, as Sarah pointed out, I mean, the public hearing wasn't posted with 15 days, but we can say we had 13 days notice, and still nobody showed up to speak.
I mean, that in itself is a little concerning, right? Is if there's going to be something that you care a lot about that really is going to make a difference, where's all the public input?
I honestly believe the only people that are paying attention to this are landlords.
I agree completely.
No one else is paying any attention to this.
Well, landlords could also have the opportunity to come and speak to us tonight too, and
But it would be good to have some of the public who might care about such a matter, be present too, I would think.
so okay. As I'm hearing a couple of things, so Tom, you want to move on to a vote, but then Dave, you were interested in potentially pushing this back.
I'll make a motion that we continue the public hearing to our next planning commission meeting, whenever that happens to be.
Is there a second?
May I ask, continuances must be set for a certain date. Tom Barzee has really hammered that into my head.
Our next planning commission meeting.
Right, but an actual date. So I would recommend that you continue it to the January meeting date.
Okay, so I will amend my motion to continue this to the January 9th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting.
Is there a second?
I'd second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So it was-
Did we have one opposed?
Well, one, and I don't think Tom weighed in on it.
Okay, I'm going to call a roll, just for the record.
Okay.
So, Commissioner Roberts on the continuance,
Aye.
No, you were against the continuance, or you're for the continuance?
If we're gonna push to January, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Farr,
Yeah.
Yes.
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 okay.
Thank you guys for your time before I head out. Thank you.
Can we clarify for staff if there's particular information you would like for us to present to you in January?
I think if you could maybe get some of what's happening in our region, at least, the other cities, how many of them have an owner occupancy? Is that 90%? Is it 50%? If there's been any, notes, meeting minutes, things that they've discussed, that lessons learned, things like that, that would kind of help us get a little more information.
Sure.
I agree with Byron. I mean, I'd like to understand what other cities, maybe our size, even around the country, but I mean, again, California kind of has their own real estate market issue. I mean, markets that have a similar to what our market looks like, how they handle these things. And, I would like personally some time to maybe just talk to folks in the city just to get their opinions about it.
And maybe, Bryant, you could get the other council folks to maybe reach out to some of their
Yeah.
folks and just see what they think, or get
Yeah.
some input, or
Definitely, I can follow up on
They
other
even
other
know
stuff,
about it.
and I'll put in some more research into the regional aspect. Or
Yeah, I know a lot
similar
of you-
markets, at least.
I think we
You
could
know,
all
the
talk to our neighbors,
Right.
The easiest
input.
information is obviously to find Oregon, Washington, and California because they're all over this sort of stuff right now. But it's trying to
And then I know
navigate through all that to get to.
another piece is I know the residential, and I don't have it in front of me, and there's different zoning even within the single multifamily. I mean, maybe we need to look at that again and maybe better define that, because again, maybe this doesn't make sense for the Ward 4 housing units, but maybe it does make sense in other parts of the city. Maybe it does or doesn't make sense in the avenues. Maybe it makes sense in the Ward 1 area. I mean, so maybe looking at that, taking a look at the current zoning map again, might be helpful as well.
We'll see if we can pin down a number on our average home size as well. If anything else occurs to you between now and then, the information you would like us to present, let us know, and we'll try to put that together before January.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody. So moving on to the PUD amendment, PC 2019-18, is continued.
Yeah, this is an item that we did advertise, but expecting the application to be presented, and then we did not receive it. And so we would like to continue this. This is so that we don't have to re-advertise. This is one that we would like to continue to January 9th.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to continue consideration of the Northgate PUD amendment and the associated public hearing to the previously decided January meeting date.
January 9th, so moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Perfect. And unless Anessa has something to say, nope, okay. There's no comments from the public. Comments from staff.
None tonight. It looks like the connection, there's something wrong with our connection, so we'll postpone or further training from tonight so we can figure out what our technical difficulties are.
Perfect. Comments from commissioners? I just real quick, I know I emailed you, Sarah, about the bylaws, and I don't know if we've even talked about that upcoming, the bylaws plans just as our forum. Could you kind of just give a quick update to everybody on kind of what those are and what we're trying to do with that? And
Sure. So we don't have any bylaws for this group. Generally, the way the Planning Commission operates is for the most part set out in the municipal code, but there are things that are not contained in the code, like what officers the Planning Commission has and how they are elected and what happens if the chair is absent. Those are typically, how a meeting is run are typically laid out in bylaws, which we don't have. We had been thinking that once we got the zoning ordinance adopted, that would be something we would take on. I don't know if you all have noticed the way we have, but the zoning ordinance update was like case number 6, and now we're on case number 18 suddenly. So we've had a real uptick of business this late summer and fall. So we're a little behind on that, but we hope to have an annotated outline of bylaws to put before you for discussion. And we're talking about January. That will probably be part of your January meeting so that then we can get that fleshed out and before you for adoption. So I would expect to see that at your next meeting. And it will mostly focus on how a meeting is run, just because some of the more procedural things to go along with what's laid out in the zoning ordinance and in the municipal code.
And if anybody has anything that they would like to see in that, I just recommend sending an email to Sarah about that. I know one thing that I've spoken with Sarah about, and I don't know if it's like the first wave type thing or something we add at some point, but I would like to see opportunities for the Planning Commission to kind of be able to, some process to, pass on as a body, recommendations, official recommendations to City Council on if things were to come up. Again, I don't necessarily have examples of where that would be applicable, but I do know that as the one thing, and with the master plan, getting several years out from there, if there's things that we see with the master plan that maybe are implemented, but maybe need to be looked at, like the city council to look at, or haven't been implemented yet, or something like that, we could kind of, as a body, come together and issue some sort of official nudge or something like that to kind of pass on to city council. I think this is one example that I came up with, but so if anybody else has any other ideas or anything like that, please just direct them to Sarah.
I love bylaws. It'll be great.
Well, does anybody else have anything else? With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Great. Thanks, everybody.
They're all behaving. Everybody's well rested. You wouldn't recognize on an average day. People are hangry.